At 4:07 a.m. my phone vibrated on the nightstand with a chime I had never heard before. The ADT app congratulated me that the front door of our Jamaica Plain condo had been disarmed by guest code 3. 30 seconds later, Airbnb thanked me for my hospitality and said our Seaport Skyline sanctuary guest had checked in on time. I sat up so fast the room tilted, because my husband and I had not listed our home on Airbnb, and our son was asleep down the hall with a stuffed octopus he believes can hear his dreams. The hallway nightlight glowing against the kids' art made everything look kinder than it was. I padded into the kitchen and tapped through screens with the reflex of someone who runs a small business and knows that apps carry daggers. The Airbnb listing used photos of our living room, only rearranged so that the faded red rug I love had been flipped to hide the tea stain near the edge. The description bragged about a chef's kitchen with vintage copper. It offered weekend rates that could make a mortgage blush. The reviews were weak, old, and mentioned a thoughtful host who left local beer in the fridge, and the username on the account made bile climb, a mashup of my husband's initials and our street name. We bought the third-floor condo on South Street 3 summers ago, when the maple in front still did that July rattle and our son was small enough to fall asleep on my shoulder in the stroller on the walk back from Jamaica Pond. I run a small preservation framing studio on Center Street and sell archival mats and old maps online in the evenings. On weekends, I install gallery rails in brownstones in the South End and Beacon Hill when the clients pretend they are not anxious. My hands know glass, linen tape, and the kind patience of straight lines. My husband, Elliot, is a chef. He had been the sous at a South End spot that turned into a magazine profile, and then had left to open a place with friends in Fort Point that piled him with 16-hour days and adrenaline. He smells like citrus peel and singed rosemary even after washing twice. His hours were never gentle, but they were predictable in the language of restaurants. Prep by noon, rush at 6, clean down after midnight, dead on Tuesdays, Scrabble on Saturdays. We were one refrigerator breakdown and one surprise copay from losing our rhythm. My father in Salem had a coronary stent in March. He is fine, and also the paperwork made me want to live on the floor for a few days. Our son needed a new inhaler because allergies turned theoretical. The deductible reset in a way that felt like a bank joke. We had burned through our emergency fund on a roof patch and a dishwasher that died in an ugly, sudsy way. Nothing in our life looked like a rebellion. It just felt like living under a drum that beat too close to the bone. The first red flag had been a scent. It showed up in late spring on a hoodie of Elliot's that he tossed on a chair of wood smoke with a sweetness I couldn't place, and underneath it a hotel's idea of clean. He said a line cook had gone heavy on a new applewood. He said the new place kept nice soap in the bathroom. The second was a set of hours that made no sense. He would say he had a late prep and then the MBTA pass when our bank account would show 2 late-night taps on the blue line to Maverick and back on a night he claimed he had staged with a buddy in Kendall Square. The third red flag wore numbers and a habit. Our Nest Hello doorbell started to blink out for exactly 13 minutes at a time on Thursday nights, which is an odd rhythm for firmware. If it had been random, I would have blamed software. It was not random. At 4:12 a.m., I turned off the ADT chime and opened the live feed. The foyer was black. I stared at the keypad log and saw the trail, disarmed by guest code 3 at 4:07 a.m. Armed stay by host at 4:09 a.m. The Airbnb app, like a cheerful store manager, suggested I send a welcome message or offer an ad on late checkout. I scrolled to the payout section and watched my last name sit cleanly beneath a routing number I did not recognize. The first wire was due at 11:00 a.m. My thumb hovered between panic and procedure. The part of me that runs a tiny art business and fixes other people's frames moved first. I took screenshots of everything the listing, the keypad log, the masked payout, and saved them to my business cloud and to a thumb drive beside the label maker. I toggled to Bank of America and put the joint account's debit card into a freeze. I opened a new checking I had promised myself during our last argument about tips and cash that disappear into pockets, and set up alerts as if the app had hands. It was a random Thursday in February. Snow had done Boston the favor of looking clean overnight. My son had a spelling test he didn't fear and a library book he loved. He shuffled into the kitchen at 7:00 and asked if we were still going to his cousin's birthday in Quincy on Sunday. Yes, I said, because children need calendars that keep their promises. I packed his lunch with the practiced press of sandwich halves into wax paper and tucked a note that said he could pick any dessert at City Feed if he felt brave during his spelling. I kissed his hair and learned the smell of calm, at least for him. A neighbor texted at 8:20 to ask if we had gone out of town because a couple with roller bags had asked for the third floor earlier and then turned toward the back stair. She added a little flourish about how you never know with people and emojis of eyes. I asked if she had a ring cam on that back entrance. She did, because in this century we all pretend we won't need receipts until we do. She sent me a clip. Two visitors, a man and a woman in puffer coats, rode the back stairs with the ease of people told to expect welcome in a dark hallway. Their breath steamed in the way Boston air does. The timestamp tickled with mine. Another neighbor, the fourth floor across the hall, texted me a photo at 9:22 when she left for work. The Airbnb lockbox had been zip tied to the gas pipe by the stairs. She said a concierge service must have installed it. She had seen two guys with a clipboard and orange tool bags on Wednesday. I did not need the detail, but it took out the guesswork. I walked our son to J.P. Licks after school for his spelling dessert and pretended that sprinkles and dusk could quiet a house buzzing with electricity I hadn't ordered. When Elliot texted at 5:03 that he would sleep at the restaurant's staff apartment in Fort Point because of an early morning inventory, I typed back a thumbs up like that salty crew emoji that pretends everything is chill. I moved the topic to our son's spelling and how proud he should be to spell picture without blinking. I put the locking bar on our bedroom door when our son fell asleep and set my phone to chime on any ADT disarm. It did at 11 too, and again at 1:41, the way a pattern speaks when it wants to be found. The next morning I went to Bank of America on Center Street with my business bank officer face and asked about our joint account. The teller polled me to a manager who recognizes me because I've done Saturday morning deposits since opening my shop. She printed me screenshots of the Airbnb payout record landing in a green dot account with my husband's name on it, and she nodded like a person who knows the shape of both kindness and rules. She put a stop code on any future external transfers not initiated in person or with dual approval. She wrote down a case number in careful black pen boff ominous 243-1198 and told me, gently, to call our condo association because the bylaws would be a hammer I could legally swing. I walked next to the licensing desk at 1010 Mass Ave because that is where Airbnb fights go when neighbors get bored of leaving notes. The woman behind the plastic shield asked me for unit address, condo docs, and evidence. I laid out printouts and asked whether my unit had any short-term rental registration on file. It did not. She gave me a form and a sympathetic smile that made me wish this was ordinary for neither of us. She said she would send an inspector within the week because violations carry fines the city enjoys collecting even if it cannot enjoy how they happen. People love a public scene to have clean edges. Mine arrived at Sunday's birthday lunch at the Fat Cat in Quincy because my sister had rented the back room and shipped in home-baked cupcakes from Wollaston, and because mothers with late-stage wisdom do not let adult children ruin events without evidence. Our family is the sort that takes pictures of everything and fills group chats with in-jokes, so I was not subtle. After music and pizza and my son's lopsided candle wish, I asked for a minute and put my folder on the far end of the table next to where the plates lean when people stop pretending they want salad first. I laid out the ADT logs, the Airbnb listing printouts with my couch rearranged into a stranger's, the bank's case letter, and a screenshot of Boston's new enforcement page. I had also printed 2 MBTA blue line taps from our Charlie card portal showing Elliot's pass hitting Maverick after midnight on nights he claimed the restaurant had kept him hostage. Nobody likes it when a person brings proof to a party. My sister put her hand on my forearm and asked if I wanted water, which is code in our family for "Do you want me to drive?" My mother looked at my son and made an expression I had only ever seen when my father's heart acted like a stranger. Elliot's face did that static thing professional liars practice and amateurs botch. He spun a tale about a pop-up tasting he and a colleague were hosting in Eastie, a deal with a traveling supper club that did overnights as part of the mystique, guest codes for safety, and an Airbnb listing that he had created under our name to be temporary while the supper club sorted permitting. He said it like a person reading from a playbill he hoped everyone would enjoy. I watched an ancient expression move through the room like a small earthquake. What startled me wasn't even his arranging of facts. It was my own body's quiet. I did not pound the table, did not grow theatrical for anyone's benefit. I slid a copy of the condo bylaws out, with the clause highlighted that stated no unit may be used for transient accommodation. I put my finger on the inspector's complaint form with the case number stamped and asked my mother to please pass me a cupcake because our son was waiting for the part where all adults pretend everything is fine in his vicinity. In the parking lot after, my sister slid me a square of paper with a lawyer's name and said she hated everything about papers, but sometimes they hold you. The morning after the party, the city inspector came, slipped a notice under the Airbnb guest's door, and stuck a neon orange placard on our building's back entrance that said "Stop work," because the city has a sense of humor. The guests left with their roller bags and a Yelp Y expression and took an Uber with a driver who probably has a story now about a careless host. My neighbor across texted me a photo of 2 men coming later that night to snip the zip ties and remove the lockbox. She zoomed in enough that the man's left wrist tattoo showed a set of coordinates. I didn't need to search them. I recognized the pattern from his hand once passing a plate to me at a friend's winter potluck. It pointed to a spot near the ICA, a place Elliot had claimed he liked to sit between prep and dinner to watch the water. Reveal 1 came 2 days after the inspector's visit. A letter arrived from our building's property manager stating that a $5,000 fine would be assessed for an unpermitted short-term rental plus legal fees if they had to chase compliance. The letter bore the signature of the board president, a retired teacher whose cat hates children. The note added that any further violations would be referred to the city solicitor. I held the paper in our kitchen like it weighed more than words and felt the unlovely relief that someone else's rules would carry some of this weight. I scanned it and sent it to Elliot and to the lawyer my sister had scribbled for me. I opened a spreadsheet and began moving bills like sandbags. Reveal 2 sat in our mailbox with my name on it. A letter from an ex confirming a new card had been added to our joint account with a supplemental authorized user named EM Trust. The mailing address for the new user was in East Boston, on a street I knew only because a client once asked me to hang a triptych in a new glass building there and apologized for the echo in their green lobby. I called him X and removed the user in the same voice I use when I tell clients their favorite postcard has been stuck to cardboard with the wrong glue and will not release. Clear, unsentimental. The rep gave me a reference number and recommended a credit freeze. She was kind, but more importantly, she was efficient. Reveal 3 came like a slap disguised as courtesy. Our son's school emailed to confirm changes to pick up permissions. Someone had added a family friend with a matching East Boston address to the list of those allowed to take our son from aftercare. The office admin is the sort of woman who has fixed 1,000 small domestic storms the rest of us prefer to ignore. She wrote with the dry clarity of competence, asking me to confirm the addition and, if not, to come by with identification so they could reset the list. I brought the court letter from the temporary order I did not yet have, and a copy of my driver's license, and the code word sheet I had printed from a co-parenting resource online, because sometimes the internet makes sense. Reveal 4 sat in a storage unit, as these things so often do. My framer's brain hates chaos. I had a sense of something missing from the hall closet where we keep wrapping paper and candles. The inventory that lives in my spine whispered that a duffel had gone. I called a locksmith I use sometimes during weird project hours and asked him, in the voice of business, to come with me to the base storage in East Boston at 10 a.m. because there was a box I needed to open that belonged to me in a complicated way. He met me there and made the lock on Unit 2G do a small pleasant click. Inside, catering Cambros, 2 chef jackets that smelled like other people's rosemary, a banker's box labeled Harbor, and a bag with toiletries that do not live in our house. The banker's box held a lease for a 1-bedroom at a place called Harbor Pier Residences, signed by Elliot, and a single cosign with half a name blacked out by a heavy-handed marker that missed the last letter. The last letter was enough. Money squeezes turned mean. The restaurant's backers stopped answering the Slack thread that fed the spreadsheet where profits would one day live. Our son's inhaler refill came due on a week the deductible bit. The copy hit and made me ask Clementine on Center Street to float me a week on that board because my supplier wanted his check on delivery. I did the thing good people do when cornered. I took a job I didn't want, hanging 30 frames in a Beacon Hill parlor where the owner wanted her art to look less sad, and her husband's face looked permanently like a question he didn't want answered. In the middle of the day, Mass General called me to confirm an appointment for Elliot and partner for a GI consult that he had rescheduled twice. My number got the call because my name was still stapled to his medical life even when his actual life was disassembling mine. The voice on the phone apologized because she had to, then moved on because a hospital cannot afford your story. There is a question people like to imagine they would answer cleanly when they have not been in the room. Would you go nuclear at once? Call the police, the bank, the city, the credit bureaus, the lawyer's cousin who eats these for breakfast and whispers about charges and custody, or would you step in degrees, keep the kids' calendar seasonal, freeze the cards, and hold the criminal hammer for when money or a child actually leaves your hand? I decided to be a fence. I would document every board that got loose. I would not throw the hammer unless Elliot used my name on a loan or tried to remove my son from school without my hand on the pen. The lawyer my sister recommended sits in an old brownstone on Beacon Hill with file cabinets that look like they remember better legal paper. He read my facts and underlined dates. He wrote letters like painkillers to Airbnb, to the bank, to the condo board, to the city licensing office, to the school. He filed for a legal separation with temporary orders for parenting time, decision-making, and property. He asked for a protective order prohibiting either of us from listing the residence for rent, incurring debt on joint accounts, or altering school records. He gave me a sheet with a dozen boxes and said to initial each one as I completed it because the brain loves a list when it cannot love a person. The judge at the Suffolk Probate and Family Court on New Chardon Street looked like someone's favorite professor who learned to hold a gavel to stop people from thinking they can talk over other people. He read the filings and ordered a temporary schedule that gave me school nights and alternate weekends, gave Elliot dinner visits midweek, and set exchanges at the playground by Jamaica Pond because children do better with ducks nearby than in parking lots. He prohibited either party from listing or renting the residence or any part of it, and required that neither of us change the child's school or medical contacts without both signatures. He froze joint cards. He did not throw epithets or theatrical wisdom. He numbered the case D-1733 and set a review in 60 days. Our babysitter, Anya, a BU junior with gentle shoulders and a thicker spine than her age suggests, gave the independent witness account nobody wants to need. One Thursday, when Elliot picked up our son for a late dinner, she noticed his phone connecting to our Wi-Fi at 10:13, even though he had left an hour earlier. She thought she had imagined it until the Nest chime pinged a disarm. She looked at our little interior Wyze cam. I had put one above the breaker panel because I do not like being stupid twice, and saw him pop the panel with the casual reach of someone who owns the muscle memory and flip the transformer breaker with a two-fingered flick. He held a door for a woman with a glossy ponytail as she walked in with a roller bag. Anya texted me the timestamps and told me to take the Wyze SD card like evidence in a show, which should not be how people tutor each other, but here we are. Temptation is a loud drum and also a whisper that says maybe he wants to come home if you make it a good story. I handed him a document instead. I put in writing that I had opened a separate checking in my name. Only Bank of America gave me an account ending in 1168, which felt like a blessing in which I would route my business deposits, and that I had set my own HSA contributions to pause. I sent a letter to our condo board confirming that I agreed to the remedy terms, paid the first half of the fine from my new account, and asked for a payment plan for the rest. I wrote to the school in language that would make a judge happy should anyone in a courtroom ever need to read my emails to believe I had behaved. I said that any attempt to pick up our son by a non-parent would require a verbal confirmation from me with the code word on file, full stop. Elliot insisted in a series of paragraphs that would look persuasive to a person who had not seen the Wyze clip or the lockbox, that the Harbor Pier lease was for a Miss C and Place kitchen the restaurant needed for a pop-up series in East Boston, that the lockbox belonged to a concierge service that had misunderstood instructions, that his friends had used our place to host a tasting without his consent and he had overcorrected with the Airbnb listing, that the Amex user had been added by mistake using an autofill from a supplier's spreadsheet, that the school pickup edition was a misclick while adding a family friend to the emergency contact list, and that the blue line taps to Maverick were from him grabbing Eastie Pizza because no one in Fort Point makes a proper slice. He asked for grace the way people ask for napkins at a crowded table, like it should be obvious and infinite. I drew my line. I wrote back only in logistics, confirming exchanges and times, entering reimbursements for half the inhaler, uploading receipts for soccer sign-ups, clicking green checks and refusing to move anger through an app that would someday be an exhibit. I did not let him in our door when he tried the code and found it changed. I met him at the pond with hot chocolate because it was 30 degrees, and I will not let my son stand and shiver inside someone else's lesson. I let my face do neutrality for more minutes than is healthy for a human body. I went home and ate crackers on the kitchen floor because chairs felt too big. Weeks scraped like wool. The Airbnb account went dark. The city sent a notice stating the complaint had been closed with violations assessed. The condo board accepted my payment plan in a letter that could not be friendlier if it had tried. The MX account unfurled no more surprises. The school kept the code word and used it once when Elliot's phone died and the office needed to hear my voice. My father's follow-up went fine. My mother made soup in a way that communicates and refuses to require my words. My son drew a picture of our living room with the red rug and the octopus on the couch and a small rectangle next to the door he labeled with careful block letters, "Beep." He explained that it was the keypad and that it meant we were safe. He is not wrong in any meaningful way. The aftermath is a low hum and a calendar with squares no longer held together by fantasies. The restaurant's backers restructured, Elliot's name vanished from the website bio. He moved into a room in East Boston with a view of a parking lot and a sliver of water, and a lease that exists in his name only. I asked for a copy and saved it under a folder named Dates. He sees our son on the schedule the judge wrote. He is gentle when he is there in ways that remind me we did not build a life on nothing. I hold my line and keep my receipts. I sleep better when the ADT pings at night for trivial reasons, like a cat asking the world to remember it exists. Would you press criminal charges for the forged Airbnb listing and the way a bank account got rerouted, knowing you could lay out a timeline that would convince someone in a robe to nod? Or would you hold the civil boundary and let the city take its fines and the condo board take its pound of compliance and leave the rest to shrink with time? Would you request a formal safety plan through the court that bars the presence of any non-relative overnight in housing where your child sleeps, even if that seems punitive on paper? Or would you rely on code words and schools and the fact that your son's teacher knows your face better than she knows your husband's? I chose to be exact and not theatrical, to let paper do the yelling I had already grown tired of in my own mind. The ADT tone that woke me that first morning has become something else entirely now. I changed the chime to a softer bell because the default made my chest go white. Sometimes it sounds in the middle of the night because the heat kicks and the system thinks doors swell the way old wood does. I wake with my throat tight and listen for steps that no longer come. I turn over and watch the dim blue of the hallway nightlight paint a rectangle on the wall where our son's self-portrait hangs crooked because I like it that way. In the morning, I walk to the pond, watch the geese bully the joggers, and a crow sometimes hops onto our stoop and stares into the nest holo like it recognizes itself and disapproves. Today at 4:07 a.m., the ADT pinged because the system thought the entry door had flexed. I lay there and counted to 30. The house exhaled. The aquarium hum of the fridge turned into ordinary noise again. The blue on the hallway wall softened. I made coffee before the sky admitted anything, and in that quiet I taped a new white label under the breaker panel that says in my block hand, "Leave on." It is petty and true. It is the shape I have chosen for my life for now.